We are live on YouTube. We're live on YouTube. Calling in from 941-0414. Might be Councilor.
Somebody's dialed in with 941-1404?
0414.
0414?
Yes,
Can you
that's
tell us-
me.
Who's that?
Hello, it's Councilor Dufour.
Okay, thank you.
Is this the phone number for the council meeting or for the closed meeting?
There is no
Yeah,
closed
we don't
meeting.
have closed. We don't have closed today.
Okay, that's what I thought. It just okay, the confidential call-in information. Sorry, I thought that meant closed for a second. Are we not doing it on Zoom anymore?
We are Zoom. We've got you dialed into Zoom though, as opposed to seeing you.
Okay.
Did you?
Sorry, I'm just a
Did
bit
you want to go out and
confused
come
'cause
back?
stuff was coming from Rob Clayton instead of from Madison. So I hadn't checked that email from Rob.
Addison, you want to make sure that Luke has the link to video conferencing?
Did Madison send the link out?
Madison sent it and then Rob Clayton just sent out so that if you had difficulty, you'd have his contact information, but it should be the same link.
Okay,
is
I'm
the
just
same
seeing a YouTube link, not a Zoom link. And a toll-free ID number. That's why I called in. I thought it might be a
Can we flip
conference.
Luke?
Do
Madison,
you want
can
to
you,
pop him a
call.
link?
can we flip Luke the
Madison's
link?
going to pop you a link.
Hey, Rachel, it's Rick.
Hi.
Did you happen to get my email about the conflict on the 6.9? Okay,
Yes, I did. Thank you.
good.
Can you just let everyone know we're live on YouTube as well?
We are live on YouTube.
Okay, there I am, Rachel.
There we
Thanks.
go.
just close that door on the way out.
Melanie, I wanted to test your audio. Can you speak?
Hi, can you hear me, Maddie?
Yes, I can. I just wanted to make sure. I'm going to put you on mute on my end, and then I'll unmute you when needed.
Great, thanks, Madison.
Thank you.
Rachel, I'll wait for you to tell me that Shaw's giving you the thumbs up there. Or
1
Madison.
minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
Recording now. Less than 1 hour. 30.
30 seconds.
We're missing Councillor Shoemaker. I think Councillor Vezo-Allen's called in.
15 seconds.
Who else am I missing here?
9.
Do you have Bethel Allen?
I think she's
We
called
don't
in.
have. I don't believe we have her.
No, we don't have her yet. Well, she's
Not yet.
texting me, so.
Maybe that's everything. 0 seconds.
I think she's got her now. And we're live, right?
Okay.
Just confirm that for Rachel. Something is allowed.
Okay, council, we are live. We have Mr. Bonifera with us, with Mr. Brewer, and we're going to deal with the PUC matter, I think, early on in the agenda. I want to thank them for attending. Before we call the meeting to order, there were just 2 things I wanted to raise, and then there's some housekeeping that Rachel will go through with you. The first thing I wanted to acknowledge is how well we've done as a community through COVID. And I don't want to acknowledge that to suggest that we should let up. To the contrary, I want to acknowledge it to encourage our community to keep on doing what we've done that have put us in the position that we're currently in. We're one of the lowest, I think the lowest prevalences per 100,000 people in the province of Ontario. Algoma is one of the safest places to be, and Sault Ste. Marie certainly one of the safest communities to be in. And that's because a lot of us, I think the majority of us, have followed public health advice. And it's not time to stop doing the things that we've done to get us to this position. So as we open up as a community, I want to really encourage people to be mindful of a few simple rules. If you have any COVID-19 symptoms, stay home and self-isolate. So if you're not feeling right, don't go to work, don't go to the store, don't be out and about. If you have any symptoms, stay home and self-isolate. If you don't have symptoms and you're out and about in the community, make sure that you keep a physical distance between you and anybody else of 2 meters. If you can't do that, we ask that you wear a non-medical mask. At all times, wash your hands. COVID-19 does not stand up to soap and water, so wash your hands when you leave your house, wash your hands when you get home, and wash your hand anytime in between that you get a chance to do that. And one of the other things that Algoma Public Health is asking us to do is they're asking us to keep track of who we interact with. And they're doing that so that if you do test positive for COVID-19, then they can contact, trace very quickly, and get in touch with anybody that you may have been in touch with. So good job to date, Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma, but let's keep on following these rules as we move forward so we can keep on keeping our community safe. And the second point I want to make and the issue I want to raise does relate to community safety. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, we've seen some systems in place that aren't adequate to deal with the problems that they have. And one of those systems is our substance abuse system. And we have seen over the last number of weeks what appears to be an increase in what is publicly termed overdose. So we have seen an increase in people that may be dying from overdoses. But I think that that is somewhat misleading language, because when people hear about overdoses, they often think that maybe people consume too much of a drug. And that is the traditional understanding of what an overdose is. But we don't believe that might be what's happening here. What's happening here is people are consuming the substance in the same quantities that they generally do, but the substance is poisoned. And that's the point I think that we need to be mindful of as a community and we need to talk about. Many of us have people in our lives that have substance abuse issues. And just as it's happening across the community and across the province, it can happen to people that we know. So anybody that you do know that has substance abuse issues, talk to them. Talk to them about their substance use and talk to them about the fact that the drug supply is tainted and it's poisoned. And somebody can be consuming a regular amount that they're used to consuming. And that substance use, though unintended, could lead obviously to death. And that really has demonstrated a significant need in this community for more resources and more infrastructure. It's not justifiable that we have the withdrawal management facilities that we currently have. And as a matter of fact, we are currently lacking withdrawal management to a large degree. And it has to be addressed. And our frontline workers in this community who are working very hard on a day-to-day basis do not have the resources they need to support the community the way it needs support. So we'll be lobbying our provincial government to address our frankly lack of infrastructure for withdrawal management. And I'd ask the community to join us in that and assist us with it, because it's hit a critical point and we can't wait any longer to address this issue. And we're seeing the consequence of that through COVID. But back to my original point, I'd ask everybody in our community who knows people who have substance use challenges to talk to them and to make sure they're aware that there's a higher risk and a higher danger right now for fatalities. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please just cover what you have to cover as far as the changes to Zoom this meeting, and then we can start the meeting.
Okay, for members of council, the update to Zoom requires that you mute and unmute yourself. So we won't be doing that on our end. You'll do that when you're asked to speak. And for staff who've called in, we will be able to mute and unmute you from our end. So PUC representatives as well will mute and unmute yourselves.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you can start the meeting.
I have a motion by Councillors Christian and Gardy, resolved minutes of regular council meeting of June 8, 2020 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
And under agenda item 3, Councillor Shoemaker has declared conflicts with respect to the PUC group of properties and the PUC shareholders resolutions, as PUC is a client of the law firm. He's also declared with respect to the Huron Street Machine Shop Hub Trail Spoke and associated bylaw as a party to the agreement as a client of the law firm, as well with respect to the sale of the Steelton Seniors Center and the associated bylaw. The DFAB is a client of his law firm regarding that transaction. And Councillor Nero has declared a conflict with respect to the partnership with the Soo YMCA for day camp services, as his daughter's employed by the Soo YMCA.
Anything else, Council? Seeing none? We can move on to approve the agenda, Madam Clerk.
I have a motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Scott, resolved that the agenda for June 29, 2020 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried. So Council, before we get into the PUC group of companies report, I just want to let you know, if you do want to speak to something, you can raise your hand. I'll take my list as per usual. Just keep your hand raised for a few seconds. I'm sure I'll see you. If you think I've missed you, feel free to send me a text. I've got my phone's with me, and you can just send me a text or an email to my mayor.provenzano email address, and I'll put you on the list. But you can also just raise your hand. Councillor Shoemaker, I see you've just joined us. Thank you. We're just getting into the PUC part of the meeting, and I'll turn it over to the chair of the PUC Group of Companies Board, Mr. Bonifero. Mr. Bonifero, you are now unmuted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Can I first read the motion to appoint the mayor as council's proxy?
Sure.
It's a motion by Councillors Christian and Scott, resolved that City Council is now authorized to meet in open session as the sole shareholder of PUC Inc. And further be it resolved that City Council appoints Mayor Christian Provenzano as Council's proxy to vote on the resolutions of the shareholder.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, Mr. Bonifero, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council, for giving us the time today on behalf of the PUC. And for the support that the Council and Mayor have given PUC Group of Companies over the last year and over the last number of years. The Board of Directors for PUC set a strategy for growth and building value for the shareholders in 2019. And we did that consciously in communities and with companies that we felt we can make a difference. We're very proud of the organization and the success that they've had in executing that strategy, and that's an entire team approach on behalf of the PUC. They continue, as a board, we continue to develop strong governance models and improve at the board level. I'd like to recognize, Mr. Mayor, at this time, 3 retiring directors from the PUC boards over the last year. Jim Rennie joined our board in 2016. Jim had to resign from the board when he took a position with Irving Shipbuildings in Halifax, but he was a very strong support to the board. And Jim was an excellent resource for us from the human resource and his expertise when he sat on the CEO selection committee. So I'd like to thank Jim for his time on the board. John Nacarado left the board this year. John was appointed in 2017. And his commitment to business development and his support of the growth strategy was invincible. He's taken a senior position with Algoma Steel, and John's going to work with them to build their growth strategy. So we'll miss John at the board level and thank him. And finally, Councillor Christian sat on the board since 2016, and Paul brought a strong balance of awareness of the impacts in the community on our customers. He showed incredible commitment with, I believe, near perfect attendance with committees and at the board level. And that speaks volumes for councillors, as you know, in a busy time. So rest assured, Paul will be missed on the board, and we thank him for his time. And I want the community to know that Paul brought a balanced tone of representing the community and our stakeholders in that. He also served on the CEO search committee, and again, that I believe was a very valuable resource that we had. So thank you to all 3 of those members that are leaving. Thank you to all of the board members that served this year. The board's made up of a strong group of individuals that each bring a good perspective to the organization. On behalf of the board, I want to congratulate each and every employee of PUC who bought into the new way of doing business and bringing our organization to be a leader in the utility business. As Mr. Brewer will outline, the organization is now very well positioned to not only provide reliable and affordable service to our customers in the many communities that we serve, we are also well positioned to explore future opportunities for growth. Mr. Mayor, we've become the dragon in the utility world. Not only do staff look for business growth opportunities, now we have businesses approaching us with opportunities. And I can assure you and council that each one is carefully and cautiously explored, and to look for the perfect fit that makes sense for PUC and for the companies and the communities that we would be serving. I'll now pass it over to Mr. Brewer to present some of the highlights in our sustainability report that's in front of you. And I want to thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Bonifero. Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present today. I believe there's a slide deck that was going to be put up. Okay. I can get you to turn to the second page. I believe you've all been provided with a copy of our 2019 sustainability report. The theme of our sustainability report is investing in our communities. And in 2019, we invested $15.8 million in the communities that we serve. Our total annual revenue grew to $150 million, while continuing to provide some of the lowest cost power and water in the province to the ratepayers in Sault Ste. Marie. Next slide, please. In 2019, PUC expanded through the acquisition of Northern Waterworks to become the second largest service provider of water and wastewater operations in Ontario. PUC now serves 40 municipalities and 127 First Nation communities across Ontario. Next slide. One of our main focuses over the past couple of years has been to improve the customer's experience in dealing with PUC. We've moved more services online so customers can deal with us on their schedule. We've improved our first contact experience to provide one point of contact to resolve most issues. And we moved more and more customers to our online portal through e-billing and Customer Connect. In 2019, our customer satisfaction rating, measured every second year, went from 82% to 94% and is now tied for the highest score amongst all LDCs, or local distribution companies, in the province. Next slide, please. In 2019, PUC's Caution and Chance program reached more than 500 elementary school students. This program shares the hazards of electricity and helps young students stay safe around our infrastructure. Through our conservation program, PUC assisted local businesses in reducing their energy consumption by 1.1 million kilowatt hours. And through our delivery of the province's Affordability Fund program, PUC customers have saved $2.4 million in energy costs, and we've directed $5 million in contracts to local businesses. This program is best in class in the province, and we've been proud to have been able to bring more than $10 million in provincial funding into Sault Ste. Marie for our ratepayers. PUC also continues to offer free education sessions to workplaces and contractors in Sault Ste. Marie, helping them to educate their staff on how to safely work in the vicinity of our electrical plant. Next slide, please. PUC finished 2019 with 296 continuous days without a lost time injury. And I'm proud to say that this trend has continued, and we are now at 478 days without an LTI. We have now worked more than 840,000 hours without a lost time injury, something obviously we're very proud of. And in 2019, PUC established a safety awareness team, improved tracking for several key performance indicators, and continued to have an active joint health and safety committee. These activities are driving the safety culture we need for the future. Next slide, please. On the financial side, PUC Inc., the company where we hold our acquisitions and our strategic investments, improved from modest earnings in 2017 and 2018 to more than 1.2 million in net income for 2019. This was driven by results from subsidiaries, including Customer First and NWI. PUC Distribution has seen steady improvements to the bottom line since 2017, and it is driven largely by holding the line on expenses, as you can see from the OM&A line. Earnings in PUC Distribution are used to drive infrastructure improvements across the system and allow us to replace aging infrastructure. Next slide, please. PUC Services had another outstanding year, with net income increasing as we continue to see revenue increases from programs outside of the city. These programs, like conservation and the Affordability Fund program, allow PUC Services to provide significant benefit back to the community we live in. And PUC Commission also had a great year in 2019. As a nonprofit, PUC Commission surpluses are reinvested back into capital programs to replace aging infrastructure like water mains, water treatment facilities, and other water infrastructure. Despite relatively high years for water main breaks the past 2 years, we have seen relatively flat OM&A expenses, which has followed to better surpluses and larger capital programs. Next slide, please. In summary, 2019 was a great year at PUC. We had the highest earnings in the history of the PUC group of companies. These earnings were driven by income from outside of Sault Ste. Marie, but provided significant benefits here at home. We've achieved a significant milestone in achieving the highest customer satisfaction rating in the province, and we've been able to provide continued financial returns to the city of Sault Ste. Marie, our sole shareholder, including a special additional dividend in 2019 of $400,000. I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking the dedicated and hardworking staff at PUC, without whose efforts we would not be seeing such strong results. Next slide, please. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
So Rob, before we get into questions, I wanted to make a comment both to you, but really to Jim and the board and you and the senior management team. over the last number of years, I think we've worked together as a group to achieve these successes. Certainly, the board could have had the idea of driving more value to the asset and looking at ways to generate revenue from our community, from outside the community, becoming a leader in the water industry. But none of that would happen without the leadership, Rob, your leadership and the leadership of the executive management team. And as you've indicated, all the PUC staff on a day-to-day basis. So there's a really great story here. We have a lot to be proud of here with where the PUC has come to and how it's evolved and what it's doing now. There's a lot to be proud about our expansion in water services industry and how we're still focused and continue to be focused on providing a quality product at home here in Sault Ste. Marie. So I want to recognize you and your great work, and I want to thank Jim for his strong leadership at the board. Jim leads the PUC boards. There are multiple boards very capably. He's a strong voice there. He keeps everybody focused, and he keeps everybody focused on our governance role. And he's done an exceptional job. And I think a lot of the successes that we've had are due to his leadership, really good, strong board governance, a capable executive management team in the company, and our employees coming to work every day to make a difference. So I want to recognize that as the mayor, and I want to thank you for it. And it's something I'm proud to have been a part of. And I'm proud of the accomplishments that we're showing to council today and we're showing to the community. And I expect more good things to come. So thank you. With that noted, we will take comments. Councillor Dufour, you did send me an email ahead of time, so I'm going to start with you. And I have then Councillor Dufour, Councillor Hilsinger, Councillor Hollingsworth. So Councillor Dufour, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to echo your comments, Mr. Mayor. The story of what the PUC has done with their board and leveraging an existing municipal asset to create additional value for the city of Sault Ste. Marie has been tremendous. You know, you hear a lot in municipal politics talks about finding efficiencies and creating better value, but it's pretty rare for a group and a board and a company to come back and to show, you know, like in this past year, $400,000 in value to the taxpayer. And I want to express my appreciation to the PUC board, their senior management, and the staff as well. My question for you today, either Rob or Jim, I wanted to know a little bit more about what we're doing to reinvest in the communities that we work in. With the NWI acquisition, we now serve some far-flung communities that unfortunately we know the names of them for some of all the wrong reasons. You know, the Pekanjikun, Attawapiskat, Kashechewan. What I want to know is, how can this new investment made by the PUC group of companies continue to produce revenue for Sault Ste. Marie, but also social justice for these communities who have long been devastated by the legacy of colonialism and underinvestment? What kinds of programs are we able to run as good corporate citizens here to continue to produce value, but also to produce social change in these communities?
Okay. So with all First Nations, we work in three different ways. There's three different programs. One of them is we actually work with Indigenous Services Canada to do an annual inspection of their water and wastewater plants and other infrastructure to make sure that it will meet their needs, their ongoing needs. And then it also is a way for ISC to help identify areas for funding. So we try to help to ensure that they're getting any advice they might need in terms of keeping infrastructure working in the long term. The second program we have is another program with ISC, which is we're 24/7 emergency response. So if any of those First Nations have a water or wastewater emergency, Kaboa Water Advisory is an example, then we are the first call. So they'll call us, we work with them over the phone where we can, where need be, we actually do send people into the community to help. And the goal obviously is to ensure self-sufficiency going forward. So we go in there for a short term, we try to do what we can in order to assist if they need assistance, and then we turn it back over. And the third way we work with them is sometimes directly with them, so not through ISC, but directly with them, assisting in capital programs, or in some cases, giving them access to operator certification training, because some of the far-flung communities, as you mentioned, have difficulty in terms of getting people trained, or at least certified through some of the third-party certification required. And our goal is always to ensure that the First Nations are self-sufficient. So our goal is to go in on a temporary basis if we are called upon to help them, to partner with them, to try to get their systems up and running and sustainable. And then we turn it back over to their qualified operators, and then they continue to operate it going forward. So we look at it as an investment in helping them keep their infrastructure in the situation that they need going forward to maintain sustainability.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you have anything else, Councilor Dufour?
No, that was it. Thank you for the information, Rob.
Okay, Councilor Hilsinger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too echo Councillor Dufour's congratulations and comments on the successes that your company has had in 2019. In particular, I congratulate you on your amazing over 90% score in your customer satisfaction. That's extraordinary and something really to be very proud of. I'm proud that you're serving the residents of our community in such a wonderful way. My question is there anything in particular you're looking forward to accomplishing that you can speak to either, you know, in 2020 and or next year? What's coming up?
What's coming up? Well, we're continuing to deliver strong results on the Affordability Fund program. We've seen very positive results even through a lot of the situation related to COVID. So you've seen a lot of activities, a lot of capital programs, and in fact, even the financial results have still remained positive through some of the cost efficiencies we found. We do have some things I can't disclose publicly in terms of some of the business opportunities, but some of those continue. And then 2020 is planned to be our largest capital infrastructure improvement in the history of PUC. So it's a very significant year. I think we'd originally planned about 22 million. I think it's probably going to get scaled down to somewhere around 19 million, but it's still a very, very significant program for us in terms of trying to replace some of the aging infrastructure that the city has.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
That timing of that's really beneficial too now, Rob, considering the work that the community will be looking for coming out of COVID.
Absolutely.
Councillor Hollingsworth? So, yeah, you're good.
I'm good. I just want to say, yes, thank you for the update presentation. I know the community appreciates the update to both of you. And as my other counselor said, well managed. Just two quick questions. In your presentation, you referred to one point of contact, I believe. And I guess maybe I'll direct this to Robert. I believe you were talking about one point of contact with customer service, correct? And if that's true, can you elaborate what that really means?
So, yeah, we had an initiative called the One Stop Shop Initiative, and the idea is that when a customer calls into PUC, they ought not to get bounced around. They ought to have one person who can answer their questions, 95 to 98% of the time. And so what we ended up doing is through cross-training and merging departments, we were able to put all of those people into one department. They were able to basically self-train each other and cross-train. And the end result is now when a customer calls us, they don't get bounced around from department to department. They don't go to customer experience and then go to billing and then go to collections and then back to customer experience. It's all done in one place. And we think that clearly that's the way a customer ought to be dealt with. They ought not to be shuffled around.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent model. And I've heard actually a lot of positive comments about that. So well done in focusing on the customer. My other question is your corporation, your company has been very focused on COVID and helping our community, and such as, I believe, waiving a fee and so forth. Is there anything else about COVID that you're thinking of to help our community and individuals?
Yeah, so we continue to provide support, credit support everywhere we can, where customers call us and are having difficulties. We'll extend payment terms. We'll work with them in waiving interest fees. We'll waive NSF charges if there happen to be some. We've been working everywhere we can, whether it's with businesses or with residential customers, in order to provide it as easy as an experience as possible dealing with us. And we're trying to be there to support as much as we can. We actually had a really novel committee where we had a number of employees and family members of employees who were making the non-medical masks. We were able to distribute some of those non-medical masks out into the community. And we were also, we were able through our subsidiary NWI, they had an excess number of N95 masks, which we were able to then turn around and donate a large number of them to the hospital, which was something obviously the staff here were very proud to do.
And on top of that, you mentioned all sorts of different other communities outside of our core community. I'm under the impression you've been helping them with regards to the COVID, such as the Indigenous communities. Can you touch on that?
Well, for the most part with Indigenous communities, it's been a matter of trying to find a way to do things remotely. Their preference has been to not have people entering the community. So we've been getting really innovative and trying to fix problems at a distance. And I think that's been very well received from a lot of them. We've also been trying to take a lot of their, the work that would normally be done by them leaving the community. We've been trying to be that resource outside to assist wherever we can. So certainly it's been, it's just one of those situations where you do whatever you can, right?
Exactly. Thank you. And my last question is about the environment. I know that your company is very environmentally friendly. You touched briefly on some of your goals for 2021 and so forth. Is there anything around the environment that you can share with us on how you're going to continue to make your company more green and environmentally friendly, and especially when it comes to infrastructure investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll see that throughout our capital programs, one of the first things we do is we do an evaluation for ways that we can do things with less energy and hence less carbon footprint. So you'll see into our water infrastructure, we're using VFD or variable frequency drives, VFD drives, in most of our plants now, and where we can, even where there aren't, we're upgrading them in order to reduce the consumption. You're seeing us put in infrastructure improvements where we're able to help customers through programs like our Smart Grid program, which sees a massive reduction in the amount of CO2 being produced by regulating the voltage that customers get and hence reducing the amount of energy they consume. So you're seeing that. You're also seeing electrification of our fleet. We last year took on our first 2 electric vehicles, and we're looking forward to continuing that trend in the future and getting more and more of our fleet moved over to electric. So we think that's the way for the future, and obviously it's the way for an electric company to do business.
That's fantastic. That's very positive. I'm hoping that Mr. White and the rest of your staff, we can work closely with you and maybe learn some of these positives, enhancements that you've done, and maybe possibly adopt them into our City Hall. So well done. And again, I want to say thank you for that special dividend that you gave to the community. It does help us all. So thank you, both of you, Rob and Jim. That's all.
Okay, anybody else on the list? Seeing none. Rachel, do we have any resolutions we need to pass here then?
Yes, I have the resolutions of the shareholder. So first, be it resolved that the financial statements of PUC Inc., the corporation for the fiscal year ended on December 31, 2019, together with the report of the auditors thereon as placed before the undersigned, are hereby approved. Further, be it resolved that the firm of KPMG LLP Chartered Accountants is hereby appointed auditor of the corporation until the close of the next annual meeting of the shareholder, or until their successors are duly appointed at a remuneration to be fixed by the directors being hereby authorized to fix such remuneration. And then we have and that will be signed by the mayor as proxy. And then we have a similar resolution of the shareholder of PUC Services Inc. Resolved that the financial statements of PUC Services Inc. for the fiscal year ended on December 31, 2019, together with the report of the auditors thereon as placed before the undersigned, are hereby approved. Be it resolved that the firm of KPMG LLP Chartered Accountants is hereby appointed auditor of the corporation until the close of the next annual meeting of the shareholder, or until their successors are duly appointed at a remuneration to be fixed by the directors being hereby authorized to fix such remuneration.
Well, you moved on to the second before I was able to vote on the first, so on both in favor. Okay. So I think that is the extent of those matters. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
You are correct.
Rob, Jim, thank you for your time this evening, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to the consent agenda.
That brings us to the consent agenda.
I'm going to start with Councillor Bezo-Allen because she had messaged me about an item on it. So we'll just start with her. Lisa, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Can you hear me?
I can. So you wanted to speak to 6.8?
6.8, and then I just have a comment on 6.1. So I'll do 6.8 and then I can wait.
Well, let's do 6.8 first then.
Okay. So Mr. Laming?
He's on the line.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Laming. My question is concerning the thought of a consultant. Is the need for a consultant due to a necessary item for a funding application, or is it because staff feel that a consultant is necessary?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Council Bezo-Allen, through the direction of the Director of Engineering, had recommended that through this process of EA consultation that we engage a consultant, and this would be covered within our existing professional fees budget at Transit.
And what is the concerns about needing a consultant? Because I think we can all agree that we know that the bus terminal definitely needs, number one, probably to be in a more central location, but also that it's definitely not up to a good standard in terms of both health and safety, and also a good sort of space in our community because it is under disrepair. So what is the primary goal that this consultant would bring?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezo-Allen, you mentioned some key points there being accessibility from a washroom standpoint, that the current configuration is a great challenge from that aspect. Also with respect to public safety, by relocating it to the new location of Huron Street will provide a better oversight and safety for both the passengers and the drivers on that site. And in terms of public consultation at this point, if we're not able to do it in face, we would have a digital aspect brought there, which would be new for us to move forward on. We have talked to engineering, and a consultant could help guide us in that process. We have used the consultants in the past, similar to the Northern Transfer Point that was just conducted recently and went over quite well, utilizing the expertise that they provide in that area.
So I have a lot of faith in staff that we could probably do a digital consultation, as you know, when I make comments on finance committee that will come forward. So at this point, I don't know that a consultant is necessary, especially when we don't know what the future is going to look like in terms of public transit, you know, post-COVID. As you know, we certainly know that we have done well in this community and transit's going to be different. So do you think that this is a little premature to bring in a consultant at this time when we're really not sure as to what transit is going to look like in, say, 6 months to a year?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Bezo-Allen. This project was part of the funding application we put forward to ICIP earlier last year, and it was on year 3, 2021. So that was conceptually approved by council. Now it would have to come back to the budget for next year to move forward. But in order to get that item onto the budget for 2021, we would need to have the consultation done in advance with the public to make sure that we have acceptance and good input into that process. And so through the regular process that we follow, the consultants really provide that concept drawing. We have an old drawing, a set of drawings from internal done by, in conjunction with planning and engineer, but the consultant would provide that conceptual picture to present at the actual open house, either done in person or digitally. So we would recommend to go in that fashion. I'm not sure if the Director of Engineering is on the line to add to that, but given that, if there's any concerns, they would help guide us in that process.
Well, I can certainly understand conceptual, but I think in terms of certainly location and things like that, I think that's part of the public consultation process, because it's your ridership that are our stakeholders. So we need to make sure that the ridership is well served in terms of what is the most practical location. And while we certainly think that it is, at the Huron site, that might not be the case. So, I certainly understand that you can't design, based on a potential site, that you need to have a site in mind. But wouldn't the public consultation be something that should be done first and then start the process? And it could be as simple as, we're certainly not new to this process. It could be as simple as an easy questionnaire that we put on the website and put on social media and also, we must have data through our ridership in terms of where they're getting on, where they're getting off, and where the most used routes are. So are we using that data to help us form what is the most practical location for the new site?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezal, and yes, we are using that data exactly on that. We actually had a report to Council quite some time ago by Mr. Ver, April 9th, 2018, which had stated that was an optimal location to maintain as the facility, because it was in current relation to clientele who frequently visit the facility to purchase passes and conduct business. Also, that the route optimization that went through back in 2018 stemmed from that facility. So where their point of origination was also taking place. And it was also felt that at that point that the money spent on this facility in the neighborhood of $2 million, which we pay approximately just over $500,000, was money well spent to allow us to invest in existing infrastructure, where we have 22 buses that we need to purchase over the next 3 years, which are over 50% of our fleet, as you're aware. Our fleet is averaged about 15 years in age, and that's almost double the national average. So we really have to invest in our fleet, and this would be a good, efficient means to invest in a location that we already have, while at the same time increasing public safety, and then also providing a potential opportunity for the existing Dennis Street site that is in the heart of the community as well.
So of the financial implications, the professional fees of $150,000, would that be purely the consultant's fees, or are there other fees within that professional fees line?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezal, that's for total fees for the whole project. The initial consultation fees are expected to be anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000. So that's a point of clarity right there. So that's just for to actually do the open house, which is a small fee based on a $2 million project in relation.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Laming. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, we have Councillor Shoemaker next on the same issue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Laming. Mr. Laming, there was an environmental assessment done. You mentioned it in response to Councillor Vezoalen's questions. The alternative to relocating the transits or to maintaining and upgrading the bus barn at Huron Street was to build a new bus barn up on Sackville, right? That was one of the alternatives considered in the EA?
Through to Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct. And through that process there, it was determined that cost would be between 36 and 60 million to put them at an integrated site. So it wasn't recommended at that time, and council supported that direction back on April 2018.
Right. Okay. So 36 to 50 million or whatever that number was that you said. And then the cost to relocate the transit terminal to Huron Street, I understand it's 2 million, but the city's portion is only is it about 500,000? Am I did I see that in the report?
Through to Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, you're correct.
And the ongoing costs of maintaining and the expected repairs on the Huron on the Dennis Street terminal are in the range of $115,000 a year.
Through to Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, approximately we'd be able to avoid approximately $86,000 annually.
Okay, so it sounds like our payback on moving the terminal is about 6-7 years.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Shoemaker, you're correct.
Okay, and if we don't move the terminal, this funding that is available from the federal and provincial government we can't move it to economic development or something else, as some have suggested. Is that correct?
Through to Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Shoemaker, yeah, it should be stated that we have an 8-year plan that is laid out for transit going from 2019 to 2026. We approximately have 38 million of that allocated right now. We have about 6 million we still have set aside that we can use to adjust and do change orders. Of that, right now we have approximately 11 million that would be city will be required from city funds. So every year we're looking at about between 1.2, 1.3 million or so that we're looking to allocate on the budget as part of the master plan for the next 8 years. Heavily weighted on the conventional bus fleet, as everyone's aware, that is one of the oldest in the nation.
But the funding that the feds and the province have come together to offer to municipalities, including ours, I think ours was, am I right that it was about 30 million?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Shoemaker, yeah, total is approximately 45 million, 43 million, and then our portion be 11.6.
Right, so that 45 million that the federal and provincial governments have come together to offer to the municipality, we can't say, well, instead of moving the bus terminal, we're going to put that into economic development. It needs to be used.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Shoemaker, yeah, no, this is strategic. This is specific to transit projects.
Okay, so if we don't use it for transit projects, we can't use it at all.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, given that the money's on the table and it's a rather quick turnaround in terms of the payoff of it, I think this makes total sense, and appreciate that we're going to have one less building we're going to have to maintain in our asset management plan. Thank you, Mr. Lammy.
I feel the same way about it as you just outlined, Councilor Shoemaker, so I won't really get into any of the questions or answers. Do we have any other councilors that want to speak on 6.8? Councilor Bruni, then Councilor Hilsinger. Sorry, when I saw your hands, I thought it was for the consent agenda specifically. I didn't realize it was for this matter. So Councilor Bruni, then Councilor Hilsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question to Mr. Laming. In the resolution, it states that should a public open house not occur by August 31st, due to the COVID-19 restrictions, staff may conduct consultation using a digital option following the environmental assessment process. So can you walk me through it? I believe I understand it, but what is this digital option after the environmental assessment process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruni. Yes, this is a type of a new process, and in discussions with Ms. McCauley here, she has attended a number of webinars here that is a new option that we would put out to consultants to follow. You'd still have the same notification in the paper and with respect to mailings to the direct residents, but there'd also be opportunity for them to put information in digitally. And if they did require paper copies of anything that would need to be distributed, we could still mail in that manner. So there'd be more to come forward on that to the process through the guidance of the consultant and the latest information on following that process. That's only if we can't do a public consultation before August. So at this point, it's looking more that we probably have to head down the digital path, and that's one area where the consultant could help guide us in that process.
So if the open house does not occur August 31st, we go digital, but how will the residents, the people that use the bus, how will they be notified?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruni, they'd be notified the exact same way. We'd put an ad in the Sioux Star like we typically do, and we'd be advertising in our normal social media city website. That part of the process wouldn't change from the existing process that we used today, Mr. Bruni, or Councilor Bruni.
Yeah, thank you. Just my concern is I think a lot of people will miss it. I think this is a major move, which I totally support 100%, as Councilor Shoemaker has mentioned, one less building that the city has to take care of. My concern is, will the public receive notification, and will we have public input? That's my only concern that I have with this. And I hope the public does have input and they have a total understanding of why the city wants to move it into one building instead of having it at two buildings. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Hilsinger on 6.8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very interesting discussion from my perspective. Through you to Mr. Lamming, and I may be more of commenting as opposed to questioning, but I do want to thank Mr. Lamming. He spent some time with me this afternoon, just giving me a little bit of the history of this initial decision to locate the combined bus storage and terminal at this particular location. And as I started to think about it, I thought about the work that's being done in this area and how this area is being invested in and improved and so on. And I was feeling a little bit concerned about, really, is this the best place for something that's very in its current form anyways, it's not very aesthetically pleasing. Let me just say that. So in my conversation with Mr. Lamming, I started to turn it in my own head into an opportunity. And I thought, as a community, public transit is something that's really integral to us. And I think that the more we can grow our residents using public transit, the better we can be on our environment. There's just so many benefits to it. And I started to think about, that where the building is located and that it's a gateway from the United States into our community. And I thought, what if we could actually invest in this building in such a way that we made it a showpiece, that we showed as a council and a city that we really value public transit, and we don't just do the minimum to to modify and make things work there. What are the ways that we can make this building a showpiece, show to our residents that we really value what public transit is all about, and help to have it continue to improve and beautify this area. And I thought Mr. Lamming and I had a great discussion about that. I wanted to share that with the rest of council and with the community. And Mr. Lamming, if you had anything else, further to our discussion that you wanted to share with regards to those thoughts.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hilsinger, yes, on that aspect there, the two things that should be pointed out too is that the new facility will be built in ways of the current building standards, and accessibility will be a key component working together with the accessibility committee, and also in terms of efficiency. So if you kind of mentioned there the aspect of kind of putting a showcase, so that would be kind of contingent on the budget of the $2 million that we do have there right now. But if there's opportunity to do something along that lines to help heighten how it's presented, we definitely could explore that to see what options are available to kind of put it as a as you stated, maybe a more positive representation of our community as you're entering from the border would be something that is a good suggestion we could take under advisement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you. Appreciate that. On 6.8, I also have Councillor Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brent, thank you very much for this report. In it, you talk about the need for all of the routes to be rerouted so that they start and end at the new terminal. One of my questions about the relocation of the terminal from an area that's more central to downtown to an area that's at the far west of the downtown is just what that will do to the accessibility of downtown for people to come and enjoy the businesses there. So my question is, can we look at rerouting the routes so that we do get better east-west linkages through the downtown as part of the regular service? Is that something that the EA would be able to examine?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Dufour, you're almost foreshadowing my report that's going to come forward most likely on July 13th, which is an update on the routes that are going to service the northern transfer point. So a key thing from the route optimization plan was to have the terminal, the main one, as one location. Also with respect to the northern transfer point, which there was a public open house was held for that northern transfer point. So we're really going to focus on where our high growth area is. And we've had record ridership, and even you see in one of the appendixes there that we've been up quite a bit in January and February, well over 100,000 rides, and that's attributable to our post-secondary students before COVID hit. So it's really going to be built our northwest, east-west corridor route and servicing that transfer point where people have more options and they'll be less reliant on having to do transfers. Over the last year, our transfers have reduced in half from what they were prior as a result of the route optimization plan. And we were up year over year, about 388,000 rides from 2018 to 2019. So that's a testament to people that are using transit, and mainly, and that's our post-secondary education institutions, and also the partnership with the DSAB has helped immensely in that area. So we're seeing tremendous growth, and hopefully once things subside with COVID, we can get back on that trend of having record ridership like we did in January and February of this year. So hopefully that answers your questions. I guess the other part you stated there was the downtown core. We have bus stops throughout the downtown core. That would not change per se. It'd just be they'd all be accessible from the existing routes, so there would still be the service to the businesses in the downtown core. That would not change.
Yeah, no, I guess my question was aimed at whether or not this would be an opportunity to potentially increase those east-west linkages along the downtown. You know, if our downtown does have a weakness, it's that it's nearly 2 kilometers long. You know, and it can be difficult to traverse the whole thing. And so my question was just around if we'd be able to use this EA process to help look at kind of quote unquote shrinking the size of the downtown for the users there. And I think the answer is yes, that could be looked at as part of the EA.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dufour, yes, we can take a look at that. And just to add, just in comparison, just to see that growth at East-West Link, and then up where you're stating there, ridership alone for Sioux College in the month of February was 52,000. The next closest was Riverside McNabb at 36,000. So that's where we're seeing most of the growth and shift in the community for ridership in transit. But we definitely could look at the comments you stated from the East-West and North-South.
Thank you very much, Brent. Sounds good.
Anybody else in 6.8? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mayor. To Mr. Laming, you briefly mentioned about having the different transfer areas associated with the different riderships, such as Sioux College, which again, when you first mentioned this some time ago, months ago, I thought it was an excellent idea. Can you just elaborate further on these transfer points? I like Councillor Dufour's questions, but we're going to have the main transfer point in this particular new area, but will the money be used to build small infrastructure transfer points scattered throughout the community so that, again, so people don't have to come back to the main transfer point? They maybe just be able to go Sioux College, transfer, go to Algoma University. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, it'll be be expanded upon in the July 13th, but just a quick overview is that, yeah, right now we're really focusing on shifting transit across our community in the most efficient manner without transfer. So that's what the route optimization study stated, to have a transfer port somewhere up north. And so the strategic place that was recommended and supported by council was the Sioux College location, because it's the heaviest usage area right now. So that will allow for individuals to get across the community in a much faster fashion than having to come down to Dennis Street Terminal and then transfer from there, whereas they can go directly to Sioux College transfer station and then go from there and access 5 different routes instead of having to come down to do a transfer down in the downtown core.
Okay, so some of the money that's going to be used to potentially build this new larger center, the money will be used to build these smaller transfer hubs. Is that right? So you'll see a little bit mini infrastructure. Is that how you're picturing it, or just like a little bus station in these other areas?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Yes, the main transfer point will be Sioux College and also the Huron location. So that the routes service the community in a good, efficient manner right now. Long term, which you see probably another report there, is we do have our on-demand transit, which is taken off quite a bit on Sunday nights. We could see that expanding in the future to help have better coverage and also door-to-door service. So we would see that as an expanding area of transit in the future. So there'll be two main transfer areas of going forward. The other smaller hubs at this point wouldn't make sense based on the technology that's available utilizing apps to have rider service in 13 minutes as opposed to half an hour and an hour service with traditional service.
Okay, and just two other quick questions, which may be just, again, something to highlight July 13th, but I know that we talked about allowing bicycles, having racks on the buses so people can actually put their bikes outside on the bus. I know that you mentioned this before. Are we still pursuing that, or will you be talking about that on July 13th?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hollingsworth, no, I can speak about that right now. I actually had a good conversation with Councillor Hilsinger earlier on this today, and we have approximately 9 or so buses with the bike racks on them now. The 2 new buses that came last year came with bike racks, and we're able to source some other bike racks as well. And you will notice around town that this is some aspect that people are using the bike racks more and more as we move forward. We also had plans, the suggestion of one of the councillors, I'm forgetting right at the top of my head who had suggested it, but someone had mentioned that if there's festivals and that, like Rotary Fest, that we could park a bus at these festivals and give education seminars. That was our intent actually this year before COVID hit, actually show people how to utilize the bike racks at those types of functions there for education. But we are seeing an uptake in the bike racks that are on the buses currently.
Okay, so we're getting a little far afield here with both our questions and our answers. The report's about the terminal, and we're talking about a whole bunch of other things now that don't relate to the terminal. So I'd appreciate if the questions can be focused on the substance of the report. Mr. Laming, maybe in your response, if you can kind of focus on the substance of the report too, because we've got other things to get to here, and I don't want to talk about all manners of buses and transit around the city. So, Councillor Hilsinger, is your next question about the report, or is it about other transit matters that we might be discussing in the future?
No, it's about another hub that goes with the main hub. So just a comment, I think the hub's a great idea. Again, another potential hub when you talk about it is maybe closer to Bellevue Park for families. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on 6.8? Seeing none on 6.8. Councillor Vezawallen, was that the extent of your matters on the consent agenda?
That was the extent of my matters on 6.8. I just wanted to make a comment on 6.1.
Well, let's go to 6.1 then. Go ahead.
Yes, just a comment concerning the schedule. During our last finance committee meeting, especially with the deadline for outside agency grant applications, which is still on schedule for September 1st. I did ask a question if there's been any requests for extensions from any of the outside agencies, just to make sure that we were not being unreasonable with COVID and everyone working remotely and a little differently. And Jacob did confirm, as did Michelle, that they've not received any requests for extensions. So I just wanted it to be known that that was a question and concern if the outside grant applications, if that was unreasonable, and we've not received any requests for an extension. So we will keep with the September 1st deadline.
Okay. Okay, anybody else on 6.1? Since we're on 6.1? Seeing none, Councillor Vezawallen, we are through with you. Councillor Bruni, I had you on a list here. Was that to speak to a matter, or do you have matters on consent? So you were muted, Councillor Bruni.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to speak on what I just finished saying. Thanks.
Okay. So next on the consent matters, I have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6.5, Delegated Authority for Economic Development Agreements. Is Mr. Ver on the line?
Okay. Yes, he is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, one point of discussion that council's had numerous times in the past is streamlining services overlap between the Innovation Center and the EDC, which is now in-house. What, I see this delegation of authority for entering into leases at Millworks, but council had previously talked about wanting only one incubator in town. Why would we delegate the authority to enter into leases at Millworks if we're looking to streamline that all into one single incubator?
Yeah, so I'll before Mr. Vera answers that, I agree with your assessment, Councilor Shoemaker. I asked the same questions. I don't know that after we had kind of communicated as a council a desire to see a lot more kind of collaboration between the Innovation Center and the EDC to reduce any redundancies. I don't know if that happened while the EDC was independent of the city, but I think we're working more closely on that now that the EDC is part of the city. And I think Tom can speak to having two incubators and what the work that might be happening there. So we'll let Tom do that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. The Innovation Center did close their incubator on Queen Street, and right now there is the only one incubator, which is located at the Millworks site. We are having conversations with the EDC, or between, sorry, our economic development staff and the Innovation Center staff about how actually we can work together to provide incubation services in the community and improve the service offering to our entrepreneurs. So those conversations are taking place now, as the mayor has indicated. And at the current time, there's just the one facility in the community for business incubation.
Okay, great. I think another, if I can offer an idea, perhaps, another area that could jive with what the incubator tries to do is the idea that's being pursued of a sharing location or a shared office space that I know that other councillors like Councillor Hilsinger and Councillor Christian have expressed some interest in seeing happen. So incubating not just businesses that want to start up, but incubating economic development by repatriating residents to Sault Ste. Marie. So I don't know if that's something that can be looked at when you're looking at the various cogs in this wheel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, absolutely, and we agree there's a good opportunity for that kind of co-working type space. The current Millworks facility does have a co-working program or a hot desk type program, but we're looking at how we can expand that and then also how we can amp up our attraction efforts to attract remote workers and companies to Sault Ste. Marie within that environment.
Excellent, thank you. Those are all my questions on this matter, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anybody else on that matter? Okay, we have Councillor Hilsinger. And then I have Councillor Gardy next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ver. So while I am, everybody's going to chuckle when they hear me say this. So while I am all for reducing bureaucracy and taking faster action, I'm thinking about, I believe that you're still operating, or the EDC and Tourism Sault Ste. Marie are still operating on previously developed business plans and strategic plans. And I'm wondering if the development of new plans, sort of what the progress is on that, and how, if in any way, that those new plans tie into what this request is in your report, Mr. Ver.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger, I would say the request you have in front of you now is really the delegated authority for some specific items within the operations of our economic development and tourism teams. We are renewing and revisiting the economic development and tourism strategies. With the tourism case, with the new board that's in place, and obviously in light of COVID, a number of things have changed within the tourism industry. So we are revisiting the current strategies and plans with them, and we'll be bringing those back to council. We've had 2 board meetings to date, and we have another one scheduled mid-July. And similarly, on the economic development front, we are still working with the Economic Development Corporation Board and our teams as we're looking at and building off the presentation that was provided to council a little while ago, that revised strategy for economic development and COVID-19 recovery. We anticipate, and on that one, sorry, I was going to say the timeline was to return to council in early fall with that revised strategy.
Okay, so this request is more on the operational side than it is on any business planning or strategic side, correct?
That, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hillsinger, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, is that the extent of your questions, Councillor Hillsinger? Okay, Councillor Gardy?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask Mr. Ver to kind of speak about this a bit more, because I think we often are provided with reports, but the public at large often doesn't have the opportunity to explore them as much as we should. And I think it's important for us to kind of flush things out. I think the questions that have already been asked sort of do that. I just want to, reiterate that it's essentially, an effort to maximize economic development and investment in our community. And I appreciated the report. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else in 6.5? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Shoemaker, I think you had a few matters, didn't you?
Yes, two more, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
6.11, the grant for the accessibility ramp at City Hall. Through you to Mr. White. Mr. White, will part of the, I realize this is only for a portion of the funding that it'll cost to redo the ramp, but will part of the work that we hope to do on the ramp improve not just accessibility, but the visual appeal of the ramp? Right now, it certainly feels like you're in a concrete jail when you're going up that ramp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Certainly, the visual appeal of the ramp would be something we need to look at. We need to see if we get the funding and what we need to do to make it fit code for accessibility at the moment. But certainly, since we are getting a very nice looking exterior to the building, and it's going to have a whole new look when it's finished, we are cognizant of not just the ramp, but the whole steps area leading up to the building and what can be done to be built on to be able to fit in more nicely with the new exterior. And we also need to look at the interior of the building to make sure that any retrofits and that we do take advantage of the new look.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. I do think that the look of the entrance of City Hall is important. You did mention the stairs, of course. They, from my review, I'm no expert on these things, but from my review, they seem to be an ongoing safety hazard. So obviously, anything we could do to fix those steps and at the same time improve the appeal of the look of the building would be helpful in my books.
Okay, anybody else in 6.11? Seeing none, Councillor Shoemaker, your next matter.
My last matter, actually, I think I am in conflict on 6.15, so I don't have any questions about that. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any other councillors who have matters on consent? Okay, Councillor Scott, then Councillor Hollingsworth. Go ahead, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 6.10, the on-demand transit service pilot update.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lamming. I just have a couple questions regarding the statistics. You state that we get feedback in the form of reviews. Just so I know this for myself, are these reviews offered for each and every ride for this on-demand pilot program? And is it offered like just immediately through the application when a ride is complete, or is it offered regardless of whether or not the ride is considered complete?
To you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Scott, the statistics you're talking about right here was a survey that we produced to riders, and that's where the positive rating came in of 82%.
Gotcha. Okay, so is there an option to do it through the app, like kind of like any ride sharing services like an Uber would do? So immediately after the ride, it pops up asking for a review.
To you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Scott, there is, and that's where a lot of the data came from VIA that was provided as an appendix.
Are we able to modify that, or is that strictly set out by VIA?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Scott, we can modify what we're looking for when asked in coordination with VIA.
Okay, and then my next question is, so for the reviews or the feedback that we did have, do we receive comments as well in addition to just answering some questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor to Councillor Scott, yeah, there was a section in the survey where we got comments and we reviewed them, but for the statistics that we provided in the pie chart there, they were just the overall perspective of the riders and the ratings, which I'd say.
And for the 1-star reviews and all the lower ones on those end, are we taking that feedback and trying to implement some of those suggestions and that feedback into the next part of the pilot?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Scott, yeah, when we do a follow-up for rating, we'll take that feedback to see if there's areas that we can improve upon as we move forward to have the next review done.
Great. That was everything I had about that. Keep up the good work with this. It's something I find very exciting, and I like this kind of use of technology. I think it's important to find efficiencies this way and even offer better service for our residents. So keep it up, and I appreciate the report.
Okay, so do we have anybody else on 6.10? Seeing none, Councillor Scott, did you have any other matters in the consent agenda?
I'm just going through my notes right here. I don't believe I do. Oh, actually, sorry. Yes, I do. 6.3.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the credit rating services. So I was just very curious. I don't know who this would go to, potentially Ms. Shell. So there wasn't a lot of information on the other proposals in the report. So I was just kind of wondering, was the main reason we went with this? Can't remember who we chose. I'm just bringing up the report here. But was the main reason we selected them because of a historical relationship? I remember reading in the report that we have used them in the past. So given that there wasn't a lot of information about the other proposals, I was just kind of curious if that was the reasoning behind it.
Mr. Mayor to Councillor.
Go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, the credit rating was done by an RFP. We had 4 respondents, and all were evaluated on a matrix, which included various aspects. 40% was weighted on price, and then there was other items such as municipal experience that was also evaluated by the committee.
Okay, so price was the largest chunk of that then.
It was the largest price, although the one that was the ranked highest was not the lowest priced, it was the second lowest.
Okay, good to know. That was everything I had on that. Thank you very much.
Anybody else in 6.3? Seeing none, Councillor Hollingsworth, we're on to you. What items do you want to address?
Just one, 6.4 with regards to the parental leave and pregnancy and so forth.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I'm glad to see it. This is directed to Mr. White. For the viewers, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this is now part of our municipality because of the Municipality Act. We have been required to place this into our policies. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. With regards to the Municipal Act, do you know if there's any discussion about in the future that there's going to be a caregiver leave that follows the same type of idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. That's likely something that's been in the discussion phase in the background, but certainly the pandemic would have shifted it to the side of the desk right now. But I would expect that the province would like to see how this type of leave goes with municipalities. They did mandate it. Municipalities have passed it. And a caregiver type of leave would be something that would be a natural evolution, but it's probably some time off yet.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Anybody else in 6.4? Seeing none, any other matters on consent, Council? Madam Clerk, have you already read the resolution?
I have a motion by Councillors Christian and Scott that all items listed under date June 29, 2020, Agenda Item 6, Consent Agenda, save and accept Agenda Item 6.9 be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Council. That brings us to 7.1.1. We have COVID-19 update. Sorry, Madam Clerk?
We had separated 6.9 from consent due to Councillor Nero's conflict. So that is a motion by Councillors Christian and Scott, resolved that the report of the Director of Community Services dated June 29, 2020 concerning partnership with Sioux YMCA for day camp services be received, and that rental and labor fees in the amount of $38,432 for the use of the Northern Community Centre and John Road Centre by the YMCA be waived. And I am opening that to vote.
Okay, Council, so you can vote on that. Were there any questions or comments on it? I think it's a great initiative. I want to thank city staff. Okay, so we have some questions. Before you get into it, I'll just finish my thoughts. I think it's a great initiative, and I want to thank city staff for working with the YMCA to help move things forward this summer. I think we can all agree that there are a lot of people in the community looking for activities, and there's less opportunity than there were in previous summers because of COVID. So I think it's positive that we're giving our kids and our youth an opportunity to use these facilities. That noted, before we vote, we'll go to Councillor Bruni and then Councillor Shoemaker. Go ahead, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Is this a one-time or will be offering this every summer, the use of our facility at no cost?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, this is a one-time ask from the Y based on restrictions they have from space. So they approached the city, and this is a one-time ask.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. It's a great use of facilities to expand the offerings. My question, though, was actually a procedural question for the clerk. I didn't think we separated out conflicts on the consent agenda because I have a whole bunch of them. Am I wrong about that?
No, I didn't think we. I wasn't. I don't know why we separated this out because, like, I didn't think we needed to separate out conflict from the consent agenda.
Councillor Shoemaker, the items that you had declared on our bylaws, they didn't have any resolutions under consent. This was the only one that did.
Yeah. But I don't know, it doesn't, maybe the CEO can correct me, but I don't think we've been separating out matters that are conflicted under the consent agenda, have we?
Do you, Mr. Mayor? Not always, no.
Okay. So we should just be consistent in that practice then. Okay, so we can vote now. All in favor? You can vote on your vote on your computers. Thank you. So that brings us to 7.1. Mr. CEO, we're in your hands. I'm not sure if you wanted to speak to anything before we open the floor to questions for you.
Through you, or to you, Mr. Mayor and Council, I wrote this report to try and give you a thorough read on where we are and what our immediate next steps are. I wanted both yourselves and the community at large to know that we are working at trying to reopen things. We are trying to take advantage of our particular status now. We're doing very well, as the mayor talked about at the beginning of the meeting. And we do want to make things available to the community as we can and in the form that we can. So I've laid out all where we are at in all areas of the corporation, and I'm certainly ready for any questions that you may have.
Okay, Councilor Nero, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. White. It's a very good report. It certainly is very clear on where we are and where we're going. I do have one question regarding our facilities, the ice rinks and things like that. I know we're looking at phase 3, but what have you received any kind of information of what that would look like?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, I'm assuming you're questioning what it would look like once we're able to open some of our things like an ice surface. as
That's
to
correct. Are we looking at full teams using the ice surface, or what are we looking at really?
through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, there are a few aspects that govern what it will look like. One is the congregate limit that the province lays down that affects all gatherings. So right now, of course, that limit is at 10. We would hope that that limit is raised somewhat as we enter a stage 3, and that would allow for more people to be gathered together. I think that is certainly the province has indicated that's what they will consider in stage 3, in that team sports will be able to start having some activity. That activity will be managed though through any restrictions that the province has, and in particularly any restrictions that the governing bodies for the sports have. So the governing bodies carry the insurance that protect the participants, and they have a lot of guidance as to how the sports will be played, or what will govern the activities. I'll talk about the Ontario Hockey Federation, for instance. They've issued a 22-page document governing return to play, return to hockey. And so there are many things that the coaches and players will have to follow according to their guidelines, as well as what we may have in the facilities. Something such as hockey, for instance, and on the ice surfaces, we won't be able to offer the use of change rooms. So the participants in the initial phases will have to show up at the rink in full gear and just put their skates on by the side of the rink and go on, and then leave right after play.
So Mr. White, when we start to open these facilities in phase 3, or even, you know, even late phase 2, if it happens, are we going to expect that people will be signing off a waiver effect if they go into one of our facilities and partake in whatever sport they're doing, or whatever event is going on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, we are still sorting through some of these things. There may be the need for waivers in some areas. It really depends on the individual sport, or which sport we're talking about, and any particular restrictions their governing bodies have on them as well. So we are still working through some of those details. We don't expect that we can open our facilities prior to entering stage 3. But we do feel that we're on that path, and we are trying to prepare so that as soon as the restrictions are lifted and we are able to open, that we can respond fairly quickly to the community.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I have a list here. So thank you, Councilor Nero. I have Councilor Shoemaker next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. White. Mr. White, I've actually had a number of people reach out with kind of school-age children who are interested to know if in stage 3 we'll be providing ice surfaces to rent, provided the congregating limit, or the congregate limit, I think you called it, is complied with. Is that some place the city might be able to make back lost revenue by having surfaces available to rent once we're allowed to open our facilities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, we will be looking at all the requests for use. I would say that I don't think we'll be able to open enough ice to meet the demand. So we will have some choices to make. But we're certainly aware that the community has a lot of they're starved for content, really, is one way I put it. We've been through many weeks of the pandemic now. People have not had their usual avenues, especially for recreation, that they've had in the past. And we know there's a lot of desire in the community to have new opportunities for them that they haven't had the past 10 to 12 weeks.
So if, in terms of checking our requests for, or the demand that's there, should I be telling folks and should we be telling folks as a community that if they want, if they want to see the rinks open, to reach out to our booking services to be put on a list, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, in the the case of rinks themselves, I can assure you that the community has already let us know that there's a strong wish for ice surfaces. So we are preparing to meet the demand as best we can.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. My only other, I didn't have another question, but I wanted to comment on your report that it was heartening to see that in a great majority of the divisions that you list under your report, the departments were providing their full range of services. So, kudos to you and to everybody at City Hall and who's working from home to have been able to provide that with very little notice. And especially, and you do make this clear in your report, but especially IT, who, on the drop of a dime had to make sure that everybody had availability to remote work, and they've done, I think there was a hiccup in last week's council meeting or 2 weeks ago, but other than that, from my perspective, it's been seamless, and I haven't heard much grumbling otherwise. So hats off to them.
And Councilor Shoemaker, I agree with you, and I'm going to make one point for the general public's information. We have 2 independent reports for us in front of us, one from Blackline, a consulting company that deals with IT, and another from KPMG, who audited our spending on our services, both of which say that we severely underfund IT. So notwithstanding the fact that it is one of our internal departments that's significantly underfunded, they have performed very admirably throughout this process. So I appreciate you bringing people's attention to that, because it's an important fact that we need to recognize. But they're doing it without the resources that they should have to fund the IT of this corporation properly. It's something we're going to have to address on a going forward basis. On my list, moving next, we have Councillor Bruni, sorry. Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, I'm trying to pop it out here. To Mr. White, very thorough report. Thank you very much for it. My question is regarding the John Rhodes Pool, the Manzo Greco outdoor pools, and the Bellevue Park splash pad. The Rhodes is open on the 13th. The Manzo Greco pools are open on the 15th of July. And of course, Algoma Public Health will have to inspect the splash pad. My question is, how is that going to be monitored? Like, will there be just 10 people allowed to go into a pool or into a splash pad area? Is there a particular number that will be used?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, yes, in the initial phases, we will have to limit the amount of users in any of those, in any of the pools. For the splash pad itself, we're still working out exactly how that will work. But what I can tell you is other communities that have splash pads, the path or course of action that they have taken is to educate the public and have a lot of signage, but to only monitor it and not have the same level of control over a facility like that you would have over an indoor or an outdoor pool. So it will be more having signage explaining what people need to follow at the splash pad and doing some level of monitoring it, but not actively controlling it necessarily.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just a top-up question regarding the splash pad. When will APH inspect it? Is it this week or is it next week?
It's my understanding, Councillor Bruni, that the inspection will occur this week, and should be able to implement an opening in short order following that, as long as they don't uncover additional things we have to address during the inspection.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. White, similar to Councillor Bruni, but just to elaborate a little bit more, especially during this heat wave. That's good news about the pools. can you just comment on parents, individuals that will be using these pools, what they can expect? You talked about limited, but I'm guessing there'd be no shower facilities available. Can you comment on the change rooms? You comment on change rooms for potential hockey games, but is there anything else that we as the public should be aware of so we can have a more efficient, fun time when we go to the pools and just be prepared?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I think it would be best to wait until we get a little closer to those dates and communicate out exactly what the opening provisions will be. What I found even drafting this report is I had to make amendments to it daily until we finally released it on Friday, and even some amendments to it Friday morning, just because of the changing nature of what we're receiving from either the province or Algoma Public Health. So instead of putting out a message today that we would have to potentially change just before we open, I'd like to wait on those details until we're very close to the opening date.
Okay, that's fair. So I guess we'll just encourage our community to visit our website quite often, closer to the opening date, so they're educated on what to expect. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Gardy next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions on this. Thanks for the report, Mr. White. Just following up on Mr. Bruni or Councillor Bruni's line of questioning. For some of these facilities, i.e. the splash pad, the outdoor pools, etc., is the city working on increased kind of signage as reminders and demarcations on the floor and such to remind people using these facilities of being physically distant, etc.?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, we're working on all aspects of that type of work. It will be fairly strict in the beginning, obviously. We want to reopen properly, and we don't want to cause any negative health effects by going too fast, too quickly. We do hope, though, that it's a strict reopening that gradually lessens and gets more close to normal operations as time goes on.
Thanks, and I'd really encourage the community who's going to be visiting these facilities and using them that they do their best to be patient and cooperate with the city, so we continue to do as good as we have been thus far. Another question to Mr. Mayor, for either you, actually for Mr. White through you, and then maybe you could comment. I was just wondering, Mr. White, I know that Mr. Provenzano has, or Mayor Provenzano has been meeting with some other border city communities mayors, and I was wondering if there's any work that is going on jointly between those, and or if Mayor Provenzano could comment on any meetings he's had thus far with his colleagues of border cities.
I'll let the mayor respond to that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so what I did a number of weeks back, reach out to my colleagues across the province who are mayors of border communities or in very close proximity to a border. And I did get them together by video conference over 2 dates, and then I had some additional conversations with mayors who weren't able to make a video conference. I can tell you that I've covered just about everybody but Windsor. The Mayor of Windsor and I haven't connected yet, but I've connected with the remainder of the mayors I set out to connect with. They all share the position that we have, or certainly that I have, and I understand to be council's position, although I don't think we've ever had a formal resolution passed, that the border should not open as so long as things remain the way they are in the United States. There is continued communication amongst us, Councillor Gardy, and we're going to be communicating some positions really to the federal government, but keeping the provincial government apprised of those positions. And the strong feeling is that things have to substantially change in the United States before the border opens, and we would want to be engaged and consulted as border city mayors that are more directly affected before the federal government was to make a decision to open the border. So there'll be some more communications amongst my colleagues, and there'll be some outreach over the next couple of weeks to the federal government to make sure that they understand our collective position and that they communicate with us on a going forward basis. So we'll continue to answer your question. We are working together. We'll continue to work together. And as I indicated, it's certainly my position, and I've not talked to any of you who don't share it, but maybe it'd be worthwhile to get a formal position, from council, a resolution passed from council, so that we can say it's our formal position. And maybe if two of you want to take that up for the next meeting, you're welcome to. I just ask that you kind of work with me on it and send me the resolution so that I can have some input on that, because it's something I'm directly working on. Councilor Shoemaker, I saw your hand go up. Did you have a question that relates to this?
Can I just finish up when you're done, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can appreciate that what's going on in the U.S. Many of us would find frightening, and certainly I do. Given we're a bit of a unique border town, I think, and I'm sure you recognize that in your conversations. We're on the border of a very isolated place with a very low COVID rate. I would say that certainly the feeling I get is the regional approach that we encouraged to the reopening of the Ontario economy, I think could work in certain instances with the border, such as ours. And I would say it probably wouldn't work in other border cities, but I do think that it is something the federal government should look at, opening areas, border areas that are very low infection rates, like our neighboring community of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. I know that they are. I know that they miss us. So I think that given their circumstances, which are not akin to the circumstances elsewhere in the U.S. and even elsewhere in Michigan, a regional approach makes sense.
Yeah, I'd have to think more about that, Councilor Shoemaker. I don't know that I share that opinion, only because I'm not sure that the testing has been where it needs to be to determine that the virus isn't as prevalent in the Upper Peninsula as it may be elsewhere. I try to make some determinations on the level of testing they have there, or the frequency of testing, and it doesn't appear to be significant testing. So I'm not sure that you really can draw the conclusion that it might be as low there as it appears. And I'm not sure how it would work to, I think there's a bit of a difference between regional openings when we're all part of the same province and subject to the same legislation and governing body than there would be to selective openings on a national border where if you were allowed to come in one place, and I understand your point, we have this special relationship and we want our friends from across the river to come here. But if that border was just open, I think you could be certain to see a flood to it and to see a lot of people try and pass at that point, independent of their residency. And I don't think you'd be able to say, well, if you're in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and you live in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, well, you can come over. But if you don't live in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and you live in either Detroit or some city in Florida, or some city in Texas, you can't come here. So it would be I think it would be a difficult process, but I get your point. And I think you're sensitive to how significantly affected Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan is to the closure. I am too, and that's unfortunate, but my primary concern is the health and well-being of the folks who live on this side. And, I think the closures had a really dramatic effect probably on their economy, because we were so much of an active part of their economy and their community. But the reality is that the United States hasn't dealt with this in such a way where I think leaders in Canada can be comfortable that it's not a significant risk. And we're doing a lot. We're asking our citizens to make a lot of sacrifices. And the nature of those sacrifices is to mitigate the risk for each other and for our communities. And I don't know how you ask people to make all these sacrifices to mitigate risk, and then you make a public policy decision like opening the border that would introduce a significant amount of risk. So I think these are, I understand where you're coming from, and it's a legitimate concern, but it's the way this has taken off in the United States. I mean, the United States has 4% of the world's population, and of the 10 million cases, they have 2.5 million, and of the 500,000 deaths that we know about, they've got 125,000. So they represent 25% of the cases and 25% of the deaths, and it's not slowing down in a lot of places there. So I wouldn't be comfortable kind of personally taking that position at this point. But what this leads me to conclude is maybe we should be having a discussion about this at the next city council meeting. So I don't presume that it's city council's position, certainly mine, and I'm allowed to vocalize that and I can, put it forward. But if it's not a formal position, we should really maybe have that discussion, and we can have that discussion at the next council meeting. Councilor Gardy, I'm going to come back to you, and then I will go to Councilor Hollingsworth.
Oh, I may have been being a bit premature considering the discussion. I was going to say that it might be valuable to see if your colleagues and their city councils would be willing to pass the same resolution that you've spoken about together to send a bit of a message. I can only speak for myself. I think that border should remain closed. Councillor Shoemaker often has a lot of great ideas. That was not one of them in my estimation.
I should tell you, Councilor Gardy, there is discussion amongst the mayors to have their respective councils pass a resolution. And everybody I spoke with was confident it would pass at their council. I'm confident it would pass at ours. But Councilor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I just want to comment on the shopping. It's a small sample, but when I speak to local retailers here in our community, it is unfortunate that we don't have our friends from Sioux, Michigan coming over, but the retailers, the small sample, the retailers have said that shopping in our local community, our local stores, seems to be up because people are not going across the border to shop elsewhere. They're staying in our own community to shop. And so I just want to basically say that that's the message I'm receiving from our retailers. And also, it's a small sample, but going down the line, talking to communities from St. Joseph Island and down the North Shore, there's, again, businesses there that are saying even though they depend on the Americans for their businesses, they're still happy to hear that the border is closed to make sure that this virus is managed and that we are protected. So thank you for bringing this comment up. And I look forward to discussing it further at our next council meeting, but shop local. Thank you.
Okay, so we're still in the CEO's report. Councilor Gardy asked a COVID related question to me. Does anybody else have any questions for the CEO? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Okay, the action items under that are bylaws and will be read with the bylaws. So we'll move to agenda item 7.8.2, and that is the Sault Ste. Marie Community Theatre Centre Board appointments. There's a motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Gardy, resolved that Mike Butler, Norman Farah, and Brian Wilson be appointed to the Community Theatre Centre Board effective June 29, 2020 to June 17, 2022.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
And that brings us to bylaws.
Okay.
I have a motion by Councillors.
Isn't there the fence viewers committee appointment?
That's a bylaw as well.
Okay,
so that
go
will be
ahead.
read with the bylaws. I have a motion by Councillors Christian and Scott, resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date June 29, 2020, save and accept bylaws 2020-128 and 2020-131 be approved.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
And bylaw 2020-128 is separated due to Councillor Shoemaker's conflict. I have a motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Scott, resolves that bylaw 2020-128, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement between the city and 1188004 Ontario Incorporated, Tony Porco, to complete the hub trail spoke from Canal Drive to Huron Street, be passed in open council this 29th day of June 2020. And that's open for a vote.
All in favor? Carried.
And bylaw 2020-131, also separated due to Councillor Shoemaker's conflict. A motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Scott resolved that bylaw 2020-131 being a bylaw to authorize the sale of surplus property being Civic 235 Wellington Street West, legally described as 31572-0051 to the District of Sault Ste. Marie Social Services Administration Board be passed in open council this 29th day of June 2020. And that's open for vote.
All in favor? Carried.
And a motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Gardy that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, council.
Good night, all.
Good night.